How do you go from being Hollywood's funniest superstar to the man everyone's suddenly calling a narcissist, a control freak, and a master of manipulation? For years, Ryan Reynolds built an image around effortless charm, razor-sharp humor, and the sort of down-to-earth vibe that made fans believe he might just be the nicest guy in the industry.
Times I've interviewed Ryan Reynolds, he's always been super nice, very friendly. Now we learn new things about him and we're all sitting there like, oh my God, we were all fooled.
I can fake empathy pretty well.
But now the whispers are getting louder. Behind the sarcastic Deadpool grin lurks someone who's racked up more foes than friends, alienated co-stars, and built his marriage into what some call a perfectly orchestrated PR act. What if the man who made us laugh until we cried is actually living behind a carefully crafted facade, one that's starting to crack? Welcome to the story of how Ryan Reynolds went from beloved box office hero to a Hollywood question mark. Today, we're diving into the controversies, rumors, and shocking testimonies that suggest he might be more manipulator than Marvel. Buckle up, because this ride is about to blow the lid off a persona that, until now, seemed unbreakable. But that's not the whole story. For the longest time, Ryan Reynolds could do no wrong in the public eye. He was the wise-cracking hero in red spandex, the comedic force who turned even dull interviews into meme-worthy gold. Fans adored his social media banter with wife Blake Lively, a couple known for exchanging witty online jabs that always ended in hearts and smiley emojis. He seemed unstoppable, racking up blockbuster after blockbuster, from the Deadpool series to high-paying Netflix projects. People saw him as witty yet approachable, a refreshing break from the usual glitz and glamour of the Hollywood machine. No stiff red carpet persona or distant A-lister attitude. Instead, it was as though he were the fun friend you'd go grab a burger with, someone who just happened to be unbelievably famous. For years, this comedic approach formed the backbone of his public identity. Every magazine profile was peppered with jokes. Every interview segment ended up trending for his clever quips. He was the funny everyman, the sweet Canadian with a playful streak. But behind this show, multiple rumors and accounts have started to paint a drastically different picture. It's one thing to be sarcastic and comedic on camera, but it's another to quietly manipulate power behind the scenes. Perhaps more unsettling, he's openly admitted to faking empathy. One small statement, yet it speaks volumes. For the fans who once saw him as a comedic idol, these allegations land like a punch to the gut. Still, the bigger question remains. How did the picture-perfect star manage to hide his alleged darker side for so long?
I guess Blake Lively's concrete evidence isn't as concrete as she hyped. Meanwhile, the only evidence we're actually getting is stuff that's exposing Blake Lively.
She's quoted as saying, "I actually poisoned the whole cast against her co-star and boyfriend, Penn Badgley."
Well, the cracks have finally begun to show, and what happened next would shock everyone who'd bought into his harmless prankster image. It all began with a bombshell from an unexpected source. Fox News, a network you wouldn't typically associate with dissecting the behind-the-scenes drama of Marvel or comic book franchises. Yet according to rumors, Fox News hammered Ryan Reynolds with stunning allegations about his conduct during Deadpool 2 reshoots. The story goes something like this. Reynolds needed a last-minute shoot that required his personal makeup artist, someone who wasn't instantly available due to prior commitments. Rather than accept a scheduling conflict like an adult, he allegedly threatened to fire that makeup artist and effectively blacklist them from Hollywood if they didn't show up. Imagine telling someone, "If you're not here at my beck and call, I'll make sure you never work again." It sounds like the kind of power move we'd expect from a classic supervillain, not from an actor who usually plays the comedic hero. Fox executives, according to these rumors, weren't thrilled. However, because Ryan's star power and involvement in the Deadpool brand had grown so colossal after the success of the first movie, they supposedly had no choice but to yield to his demands. The budget and marketing for the sequel were already in full swing. If they pushed back on him, it could threaten the entire production. In short, they were stuck placating the man behind the mask, no matter how petty or tyrannical his requests might have been. It was a moment that felt like a tipping point. For years, the comedic facade had overshadowed the stories about him being something of a control freak. Now, with Fox News calling him out so publicly, it was as if everyone started looking a little closer, wondering if there might be more skeletons in Ryan Reynolds' closet. And oh, were there plenty. Long before Reynolds ever signed on to Deadpool, his personal life was already a tabloid fixture. He'd been involved with singer-songwriter Alanis Morissette, famous for her raw emotional lyrics and fearless honesty. When their engagement ended, fans were left scratching their heads, but neither side delved too deeply into the details, at least not until years later. Then came the confession. Alanis described him as a manipulative partner who could fake empathy when it suited him. In some interviews, she suggested that being involved with a certain type of partner, a narcissistic personality, in her words, leaves deep emotional scars. She also mentioned therapy sessions that seemed to revolve around recovering from that kind of dynamic. Anyone who's ever experienced a manipulative relationship knows the lasting impact. Hearing Alanis hint that Ryan fit this mold was jarring, especially for fans who still believed him to be the goofy, kind-hearted actor.
The judge dismissed it and said there's no case here.
It really is an impactful and powerful piece of evidence that's going to go against Lively.
Blake Lively, if they find that she just was dishonest and lied on one single point of evidence in this case, in her testimony, the jury instruction says that they are allowed to discount her entire testimony.
It wasn't just Alanis. Scarlett Johansson, another A-list figure in Reynolds' dating and marital history, described him as passive-aggressive and jealous during their time together. Picture this, one of the most confident, successful women in Hollywood, someone known for her iconic roles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, calling him out for insecure behavior. How bad does it have to get for someone like Scarlett Johansson to label you jealous? These revelations offered a stark contrast to the comedic buddy-buddy image Reynolds had built on talk shows and social media. Fans started piecing together the timeline, how he went from Alanis to Scarlett, then seemingly jumped straight into a storybook romance with Blake Lively. Perhaps those relationships overlapped more than the public initially realized. Perhaps the incessant wisecracks and jokes were a carefully crafted way to deflect from the real Ryan Reynolds. But that wasn't the whole story. When Reynolds and Blake Lively tied the knot, fans rejoiced. Two gorgeous people, both known for their lighthearted personalities, forming a comedic super couple. Their social media teasing, like posting unflattering photos of each other on birthdays, became legendary. They seemed to do everything with an effortless, tongue-in-cheek flair that made them number relationship goals for countless fans. But as time went on, even their adorable Instagram banter took on a suspiciously choreographed feel. Critics began to question if this was more PR than personality. Was it all a strategy to maintain a squeaky clean, fun-loving brand and distract from behind-the-scenes tension? Some Hollywood insiders suggest that Reynolds sought a partner he could overshadow after past relationships with stars whose fame equaled or exceeded his own. Blake, despite being adored for her roles on the CW and in films, wasn't quite as big of a worldwide name as Scarlett Johansson or Alanis Morissette. The speculation goes he needed to be the bigger star in the relationship. In the midst of that speculation, talk of lawsuits and behind closed doors arguments started to swirl, with some sources claiming Reynolds might be using legal entanglements involving Blake's potential co-stars to push people he perceives as threats out of the way. Nothing is confirmed, of course, but the undercurrent of tension is impossible to ignore. But that's not even the worst claim. If you're used to seeing Ryan Reynolds as the warm father figure, making jokes about parenting on late-night TV, the rumors about his hostility toward child actors might come as a gut punch. Apparently, in one interview, he mentioned feeling just a blink away from violence when he's around child performers and their parents. That's a dark admission, even if it was made in jest. Many celebrities do indeed share lighthearted complaints about pushy stage parents or the pitfalls of child stardom. But describing an impulse toward obscene violence around children crosses a line from comedic exaggeration to downright alarming. People who once chuckled at his edgy humor started reevaluating. This is the same guy who built his brand on ironically mocking everyone, but it's one thing to poke fun at grown co-stars and another to express such disdain for kids who happen to be working in the same industry. One of the biggest signs that a Hollywood star is in hot water is when their high-profile colleagues start quietly, or not so quietly, distancing themselves. Hugh Jackman, famously good-natured and known for his comedic feud with Reynolds, stirred speculation by unfollowing him on social media. Gerard Butler, asked about Reynolds' films, claimed he didn't even know what those movies were.
She wants different rules for her than she wants for Baldoni and his team, which I don't think the judge will agree with.
And if I were her attorney, I'd want to get out of this case before she has to sit for deposition, not just because it might be bad for the case, but PR-wise, it's not going to be good.
Every expert's going to skew it towards their view of the case. And then the penultimate question to the expert is, but you agree with me, the jury is able to determine for themselves what this video is showing.
Quentin Tarantino reportedly shrugged off Reynolds' entire career with a dismissive laugh, implying he had no idea how Reynolds was raking in such massive paychecks for projects that didn't even register on Tarantino's radar. We're talking about a wave of disapproval from actors and directors who command respect and influence. It's one thing if one co-star complains, it could be a personal squabble, but when multiple directors, actors, and collaborators all start sharing or hinting at negative experiences, there's a pattern that can't be ignored. Journalists and reporters who once adored Reynolds are taking second looks at old interviews, noticing how some of his quirks might not have been charming at all. Where did things go so wrong? Many point to that lethal cocktail of fame, power, and a comedic persona that can deflect almost any question. For years, Reynolds thrived on being the self-deprecating wise guy, someone who was always in on the joke. By constantly making fun of himself, he disarmed critics. But now that those comedic shields are failing, it's becoming easier for people to step forward with stories that challenge the nice guy narrative. And still, the biggest shock might be how many longtime fans felt duped. They believed in the playful, witty star who posted hilarious birthday insults to Blake, who trolled Hugh Jackman publicly. So to see these controversies surface feels like a betrayal. Nobody wants to find out that their comedic hero might be controlling, vindictive, and downright manipulative in his personal and professional life. But the story isn't over yet. When you pull back the curtain, the extent of the allegations is staggering. Fox News accusing him of playing the Hollywood dictator to force makeup artists at his beck and call. Tim Miller's exit from the Deadpool franchise, suggesting creative control was wrested away. TJ Miller expressing genuine discomfort working with him, calling him weirdly mean. Rebecca Ferguson rumored to have avoided direct interaction altogether, opting to deliver her lines to a tennis ball. Jake Gyllenhaal refusing to utter a word about him, shutting interviewers down cold. Alanis Morissette calling out his manipulative streak, describing her post-relationship struggles.
You have an ongoing feud with Ryan. You know that guy. What's it gonna take for him to actually be BFFs with you?
Well, I mean, in truth, there was a time in which we were.
Scarlett Johansson labeling him passive-aggressive and jealous. Marriage to Blake Lively overshadowed by accusations of orchestrated PR stunts and alleged jealousy. Add to that the bizarre comments about child actors, rumored spats with major figures like Quentin Tarantino, and the sense that multiple industry professionals prefer to keep him at arm's length. Even fans who defended Ryan for years are now rethinking everything. So how do you reconcile the Ryan Reynolds who cracks jokes on Twitter with the Ryan Reynolds who allegedly threatened a makeup artist's career and forced Tim Miller off his own sequel? Is it all just cunning PR designed to hide a controlling, insecure heart? Or is the truth buried somewhere between the extremes? Perhaps a man with a comedic gift who let power and fame get to his head? No one can say with absolute certainty. But what's abundantly clear is that the downfall narrative is more than just a sensational headline. It's a wave of revelations and testimonies that seem to grow louder every month. If you peel back enough layers of sarcasm, you might find the illusions that once held his public image together are rapidly coming undone. Of course, the final verdict lies with fans and the broader public. Will they continue to support Reynolds, brushing off these tales as overblown rumors? Or will they take a closer look at the mounting evidence, at the testimonies from ex-partners, fellow actors, and even entire news organizations, and decide that the comedic facade no longer holds up under scrutiny? However this unfolds, one thing is certain. The conversation about Ryan Reynolds has changed, possibly for good. The comedic genius who once charmed the world now finds himself under a microscope. And each new allegation, each new revelation threatens to tip the scales even further against him. When charisma collides with control and wit masks deep-seated insecurity, it's only a matter of time before the facade cracks wide open. Whether you still love Ryan Reynolds or have joined the growing ranks of skeptics, one fact remains undeniable: the man who once seemed immune to controversy is now enveloped by it. And as Hollywood's spotlight intensifies, the real question becomes, can he pivot once again? Or is this the beginning of a permanent fall from grace? Only time and the next wave of revelations will tell.